we should start now.
Yes, thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
So good evening, all of you. On the occasion of International Women's Day, Asha Paris for Peace and Harmony Foundation India, in collaboration with Asha Paris International Journal of Gender Studies, organizes online international panel discussion, Gender Equity and Contemporary Challenges. A warm good evening to all the panelists who have joined the program, and good evening to all the participants too. So first, I would like to talk a small bit about the history of Women's Day. International Women's Day is celebrated in many countries around the world. It is a day when women are recognized for their achievements without regard to divisions, whether national, ethnic, linguistic, cultural, economic, or political. Since those early years, International Women's Day has assumed a new global dimension for women in developed and developing countries alike. The growing international women's movement, which has been strengthened by 4 global United Nations women's conferences, has helped make the commemoration a rallying point to build support for women's rights and participation in political and economic arena. 5 key years of movement, officially recognized by the United Nations in 1977, International Women's Day first emerged from the activities of labor movements at the turn of 20th century in North America and across Europe. Movements in the United States in 1909. First National Women's Day was observed in the United States on 28th February. The Socialist Party of America designated this day in honor of 1908 garment workers' strike in New York, where women protested against working conditions. But the first milestone in US was much earlier in 1848. Indigenous women being barred from speaking at the Anti-Slavery Convention, Americans Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott congregated a few hundred people at the nation's first women's rights convention in New York. Together, they demanded civil, social, political, and religious rights of women in the Declaration of Sentiments and Resolutions, and a movement was born. Europe's turn in 1910. The Socialist International Meeting in Copenhagen, Denmark, established a Women's Day international in character to honor movement for the women's rights and to build support for achieving universal suffrage for women. First celebration in 1911, a day for women is celebrated in a number of European countries and in the United States. But this celebration occurs on 19th March in commemoration of Revolution of 1848 and also commended in Paris. In addition to the right to vote and hold public office, they demanded women's rights to work, to vocational training, and end to discrimination on the job. Russian women took the power in 1930. International Women's Day also became a mechanism for protesting World War I. As a part of the peace movement, Russian women observed the first International Women's Day on the last Sunday in February. Elsewhere in Europe, on and around 8th March of the following year, women held rallies either to protest the war or to express the solidarity with the other activities. Tired of the war in 1915, as the First World War rages, a huge gathering of women is held in The Hague, the Netherlands, on 15th April. Participants included over 1,300 women from over 12 countries. The right to vote in Russia in 1970. Against the backdrop of the war, women in Russia again chose to protest and strike for bread and peace on the last Sunday in February, which fell on 8th March on the Georgian calendar. 4 days later, Caesar abdicated and the provisional government granted women the right to vote. The celebration spreads. After the World War II, 8th March started to be celebrated in a number of countries. In 1975, during the International Women's Year, the United Nations began celebrating 8th March as International Women's Day. 2 years later, in December 1977, the General Assembly adopted the resolution proclaiming United Nations Day for Women's Rights and international peace to be observed on any day of the year by the member states in accordance with the historical nation traditions. Since then, United Nations and their agencies have worked tirelessly to secure gender equality worldwide with great outcomes achieved. In 1995, the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, a historic roadmap signed by 189 governments, focused on 12 critical areas of concern and the inclusion for Goal 5, achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls in 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. So why on 8th March? 19th March, the last Sunday of February, 15th April and 23rd February are among the key dates for the International Women's Day movement. But where then did the 8th March come from? Asked Julius Caesar and Gregory XIII. Before the Russian Revolution had not yet been adopted by Georgian calendar, introduced by Pope George XIII in 1582 to migrate the errors of Julian calendar, which owes its name to the Roman emperor, who had chosen its 46 years before the birth of Jesus Christ. The Georgian calendar is used today in the large majority of the countries. In 1917, 23rd February in Russia, thus corresponded to 8th March in other European countries. It is just as simple as that. This International Women's Day 2024 is celebrated under United Nations theme, Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress. The world is facing many crises, ranging from geopolitical conflicts to soaring poverty levels and escalating impacts of climate change. These challenges can only be addressed by the solutions that empower women. By investing in women, we can spark change and spread the transition towards healthier, safer, and more equal world for all. According to UN Women, an additional 360 billion is needed per year to achieve gender equality. Closing gender gaps in employment could boost GDP per capita by 20%. Closing gaps in care and expanding services with decent jobs could spark almost 300 million jobs in 2035. If current trends continue, more than 342 million women and girls could be living extreme poverty by 2030. To ensure women's needs and priorities are considered, government must prioritize gender-responsive financing and increase public spending on essential services and social protection. Policymakers must also value, recognize, and account for the vital contribution women make to economic worldwide through paid and unpaid care work. Women spread around 3 times. Actually, women spend around 3 times more time on unpaid care work than men. And if these activities were assigned a monetary value, they would account for more than 40% of GDP. With a small preload, I would move on to the welcome address. I take great pleasure in welcoming the experts in the panelists. Dr. Mariam Shakila, former Cabinet Minister of Government of Maldives, CEO, Group of Companies, Honorary Council of Belgium to Maldives. Dr. Ritu Goyal, Assistant Professor, Center for Financial and Corporate Integrity, Coventry University, UK. Farida Akhtar, President, a Women's Resource Center, Bangladesh. Professor Sabia Hussain, former Director, Sarojini Naidu Center for Women's Studies, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. And also, I take great pleasure in welcoming Professor Asha Shukla, Madam, former Vice Chancellor, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University of Social Science, Madhya Pradesh, Maho. So once again, I welcome each and everyone to this online panel discussion. And let's now move on to the panel discussion. Now I invite Dr. Mariam Shakila, Madam, to initiate the panel discussion. Welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I didn't realize that I was going to be the first speaker.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much for this invitation to the organization, to all the organizers, and then also so happy to be together with all the panelists. Some of you are friends for many, many years, and it is so lovely to see you all here. You see, you have talked about the way that Women's Day started being celebrated, and the world has progressed in every aspect. It is disheartening to see that women, when it comes to leadership and women, we seem to be stuck in a time rut, moving at a snail's pace. Throughout history, the perception of leadership has been intertwined with masculinity, creating barriers for women to step into leadership roles. So the barriers that hinder gender equity or equality is a subject that we have been talking for decades. So what we need to focus now is towards a holistic solution to the challenges we have and to bring about gender equality. So I'm not going to be talking about all the different challenges that we all know. So rather to try and see if we can find a solution to it. So we cannot talk about gender equality or equity without addressing inclusivity to achieve gender equity. If we cannot embrace inclusivity across all sectors, within us as women, and from the work environment, within community, we will be walking backwards. The kind of barriers that stand against inclusivity are also barriers that we identify as obstacles towards achieving gender equality. So the angle that I'm taking is that while there are so many challenges, I'm focusing on unconscious bias, the silence monster that lurks around, hindering the progress and transformative mindsets within women and the whole society. Quotas, policies, programs alone would not work. So this unconscious bias manifests itself in many ways. One is, of course, stereotyping. And this bias, you know what it involves, but then these biases are one of the contemporary challenges we face in achieving gender equity. These stereotypes limit the opportunities and choices available to us based on their gender, leading to unequal outcomes in education, employment, and all other areas of life. And then also microaggressions. Now, these are, for example, making comments about a woman's appearance rather than her professional achievements. When you go in for a meeting, these are what I call the microaggressions. And tokenism. We go into a meeting and then we are there as just a decorative piece on the table. And a lot of us women basically do not address that, do not realize that. And then they just keep silently and then they walk out. They because of the frustration and all that, they just sit quiet and then come out. This is not right. And unequal opportunities, such as being overlooked for promotions or challenging assignments. Sometimes this is done unconsciously, without realizing that they are doing this wrong. And also implicit bias. Now, for example, associating leadership qualities with masculine traits. This is something that started from cave age, and even today in schools and all that, we are not addressing this. In school books, look at the school textbooks sometimes, there are so many pictures and all that. Mommy is cooking, daddy is wearing a tie and going to the office. This sort of pictures and all that also creates this sort of implicit bias. Now, double standards. If me as a woman go out there and then shows how shall I say, if I become assertive, suddenly my assertiveness is labeled as aggressive. Now, is that fair? But coming from a man, if it comes from a man, wow, wonderful, what a great leader it is. So we have all experienced this kind of unconscious bias in the workplace, and it is up to us to transform that mindset. Often at the discussion table, especially at the beginning of your careers, I'm sure all of you must have gone in and then try to talk, try to just express your thoughts. But there are males who are overriding your voice, or quieten down, or give a deaf ear and not allow you to put in a word. As a woman, you have to speak 10 times louder to be heard half as often as a woman initially. But once you reach there, then I think the respect that you get is there. So what we have to do is to bring in this kind of inclusivity, or inspire inclusivity within women. We have to actually basically teach them what are the things that they need to do. Now, in many instances, such encounters have disheartened women. They get upset, angry, frustrated, sad, and then they give up trying. But believe me, once you decide to stand firm and courageously make your mark, you pave an easier path. At least I did. So we have to teach women to bring this kind of inclusivity courageously. We have to encourage women to let their voice be heard, their ideas shared, and their boundaries pushed with courage and confidence without giving up. So addressing all this subconscious gender bias in organizations also requires awareness, education, and a commitment to creating an inclusive and equitable work culture. Training programs, diversity initiatives, inclusive policies, they can help mitigate the impact of this bias and promote gender inclusivity. But are organizations ready to do that? So we have to make them accountable, get them to do this. Now, to address all these challenges and advance gender equity, we also must work together hand in hand to challenge and change harmful gender stereotypes, promote education and awareness about gender equality, and also advocate for policies and practices that ensure equal rights and opportunities for all genders. But again, as I said, policies alone will not work. Maldives, for example, is one country where even constitution itself hinders you from bringing this kind of discrimination. We have policies, so many policies. When it comes to implementation, we fall on the back foot. this is what is wrong. So none of these strategies also will work in isolation of the other. This is also something that we have to remember. Okay, you can encourage women, you can teach them, you can educate them, but everything that I listed over here are things that we have to work together. If we don't work together, we will not achieve anything. So achieving gender equality is a collective responsibility that requires ongoing commitment and action from all of us, most importantly from women themselves, I believe. So it is very crucial to acknowledge that the primary barrier for women to achieve inclusivity is often women themselves. It is important to always remember that as women, our greatest enemy and strongest ally lie within ourselves. Women, whether they recognize it or not, possess the ability to break down stereotypes, surpass expectations, and forge their own path to success. How do they do that? By recognizing their value, their own worth, embracing their strengths, and rejecting limitations imposed by societal norms. Women can pave the way for a future where women's voices are acknowledged and honored in all aspects of life. So society's gender norms have perpetuated the belief that men are destined to lead while women are relegated to supporting roles. Do not allow anyone to make you believe that acting with women's intuition and tendency to be fair and just and view the situation in all angles is as being incompetent. Actually, that is one of the greatest and strongest traits for women. And also, we must remember that the only limits we face are the ones we impose on ourselves. It is our decisions, our beliefs, and our unwavering determination that will shape our destiny. So throughout life's journey, we encounter numerous chances to react in diverse ways. Each decision we make influences the path ahead, either positively or negatively. So our capacity to turn negative situations into valuable lessons will shape the way we perceive the world and how we respond. So let's look at here in the panel, for example, all women who have achieved really well, who have risen to the top. Despite numerous challenges, we have broken the barriers. And we are here. But what is the secret to our success? One of the most important secrets that I feel towards our success and to all the women who succeed is the fact that they stopped focusing on life's limitations and imperfections. They stopped viewing themselves as insufficient or lacking in certain areas and started seeing themselves as being, though flawed in certain aspects, but as individuals ready to correct their flaws using the strengths that they have. These women, all of you and us, these women who have shattered barriers and defied stereotypes have shown unparalleled courage and resilience. We refused to be defined by societal expectations, instead embraced our femininity and individuality. And we have proven that success knows no gender and that true leadership transcends traditional norms. So we have to mentor other women to rise up. So here I would stop and later on I would come back. Thank you so much.
Kamlavini, unmute your mic.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. So you started off with inclusivity as a significant factor that has to be, inculcated along with the gender equity and equality. So you also spoke about many challenges and unconscious biases that hinder the gender equality, and how many times policies and programs are, just in the name, and when it comes to the implementation part, it becomes weak. And how women have reached the higher position by just, moving out of their hurdles. So you touched upon various points, which was really interesting. Thank you so much, ma'am. So next I would call upon Dr. Ritu Goyal, Assistant Professor, Center for Financial and Corporate Integrity, UK. Welcome you, ma'am.
Hi, I hope you can hear me. I'm new to Google link, so just bear with me when I sort it out. If I can, Windows, sorry. Just hopefully if it doesn't. Yeah, okay, so sorted. Could somebody confirm that they can view the slides on your screen, please?
Yes, Ritu Goyal. I think we are able to see this. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. And since I'm going to talk about my research and I'm very passionate about it, so sometimes I get lost. Please stop me anytime when probably 2 minutes are left. Dr. Kamlavini, if you could do that, I'll appreciate it very much. So, hi everyone. Very happy International Women's Day. Some of you address me as Ritu because of my mother, who I'm very privileged that she's joining this link as well. My pet name is Ritu, so most of you know me as Ritu. I'm Dr. Rita Goyal. Some people call me Rita. A bit of an introduction. I did my undergrad from Sagar University in Madhya Pradesh and master's at Bhopal University. Then I was selected to pursue a PhD in boardroom diversity at Henley Business School, University of Reading in UK in 1914. It was a fully funded qualification. Before I proceeded to pursue that qualification, I was part and parcel of one of the Indian civil service. It's called PNT Finance and Account Service. I have retired from that job for some time. I have held several positions, leadership positions in academia as well as in leadership. But my research, particularly, as I said, has been in boardrooms. That's my context. And not only boardrooms per se, but boardrooms of listed companies in the UK. So that's what I'm going to talk about. As Dr. Shakila was mentioning, that we have to be inclusive. We have to see at every nook and cranny where work needs to be done to improve participation of women in leadership and across hierarchies. So my chosen research area is the UK. So as you're aware, that when we talk about empowering women, there are two main arguments about empowering women. Some people say that women should be allowed to participate, or women should be encouraged to participate in leadership roles because it is only fair. There are other countries where they have used this business rationale that if we allow women to participate in leadership positions or across hierarchies, it would have tangible benefit, as Dr. Kamlavini was also narrating a couple of examples, tangible benefits in terms of improving GDP of a country, improving employment situation scenario in a country. So UK is one of the countries where the business rationale has been adopted. It's very different from the Norwegian context, for example, where quota has been introduced, and they did not even bother to explain as to why they are introducing the gender-based quota. They just introduced it. But UK, just like any other Anglo-American context, they have used the business case rationale. So over the period of time, because of various policy measures, Dr. Shakila was referring to policy just now, various policy measures or regulatory measures, let's say, were taken in the UK. They have not introduced a quota law. Instead of that, they have used a voluntary target approach. What they have done is that the regulators have encouraged companies, given them certain voluntary targets to be adopted by the companies. They haven't said that if you don't adopt these targets, we would bring the legislative quota, but the impact has been exactly the same. So as you can see, this voluntary quota or voluntary targets happened in 2011, and I'll share more about that in due course. From 2012, where there used to be just 15% female directors in boardrooms in listed companies in the UK, today we have 40% participation of women in boardrooms. Non-executive directors have better participation of women, but when it comes to executive directors or CEO positions, Dr. Shakila, one of the CEOs, is here, so it's a privilege for us to have her here. Participation of women in CEO roles is not that great. Chairpersons is not that great. So from that scenario, this is an international perspective, and I'm going to share all these slides with Professor Shukla. So please feel free to access any of the information that there is. For the time being, you just if you can just be with me, that's great. So what I was trying to say was that the scenario seems to have improved in the UK, but the institutional perspective has not been that way. So in 2005, Jane Kelly wrote this book, Women's 35 Years On, Still Unequal, after all this time. So 35 years from what? The Equality Act, Equal Pay Act was passed in 1970 in the UK, where any discrimination based on gender in remuneration was prohibited by law. So are you still with me, or have I lost you?
Ma'am, yes, we are with you.
Yeah, okay, sorry. And you can still see the screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The slide is
So,
moving.
oh yeah, slide is moving. Yes, okay. So this is very interesting. This particular thing. When we say rule of thumb, we understand it as more or less an accurate measurement. More or less, it's a measurement rule of the thumb. Actually, in the UK, it actually in olden times referred to a man. He was legally entitled to hit his wife or a partner with a stick, as long as the stick was no thicker than thumb. So that was the scenario that prevailed at once upon a time, which has been referred to in 2005 in Jane Kelly's book. This book, by the way, is available online in the digital version, and anybody can access it. I've given the reference of this book afterwards as well, and this is very much about the UK context. Then in 1995, actually, Vicky Holton wrote a very nice article in a very well-known journal called Corporate Governance and International Review. And she although said that overt discrimination, gender-based discrimination from most corporate settings had stopped. However, she gave a very good example, very nice example, which gives a window to what is happening in that part of the world. The UK armed forces were actually wrangling in the legal courts in the European Union, and they wanted their right to dismiss women who became pregnant or forcibly retire them without compensation. So, although overt discrimination was said to be over, but at the same time, there was a contrast in the scenario where UK armed forces are fighting for their right to dismiss women if they become pregnant. These are some of the legislations over the period of time which have been brought into force in order to make the situation more equitable for women in the UK. I'm not going to get into all the legislations which have taken place over the period of time in the UK. Again, I'm going to leave these slides with Professor Shukla, and you're absolutely free to access them. I just wanted to bring your attention to this particular slide. This shows that when that magical year of 2011 happened, when voluntary targets were introduced for listed companies in the UK, top 100 listed companies in the UK, there was the women's participation was just 12.3%. These are some of the other numbers as well. This is the Davies report, the magical report that introduced the voluntary targets. Since then, there have been other reports as well. One of the main reports which have happened, which recommended even more participation of women, again through the voluntary target approach, is Hampton-Alexander review, where they not only limited it to boardrooms, but said top management team as well, plus 3 hierarchies should have more women. And the limit was not restricted to 25%, but it was enhanced to 33.3% over there. So another thing that has happened in the UK is that the corporate sector, the private sector, has taken ownership of introducing more and more women in the leadership situation. So here are, I think somebody's got their mic open. Can you hear me, guys? I think it's better now. So some of the investors actually, such as Investment Association and BlackRock, have usually people say that investors cannot care any less about gender roles as long as they're getting their dividends and bonuses, they are happy. But in the UK context, not only the corporate entities, but investors have also taken very active role in making their boardrooms very gender diverse. Going forward, some of the challenges, since we are actually focusing on some of the challenges, I think this slide is a very good example of showing the challenges as to where the challenges lie. And they lie in executive roles, chairpersons' roles, CEOs' roles, where gender participation has not been that great. Other thing is the gender pay gap. So this is from a book chapter that I wrote with another colleague of mine. It is getting published in a handbook on global diversity management, Edward Elgar Publications, and you can see this is pretty much the European scenario across Luxembourg to Latvia. Latvia obviously has a massive gender pay gap. Luxembourg has very narrow. Britain lies somewhere here, 15%. So it's like, so gender pay gap of 15% basically is like women going without any remuneration for every 2 months every year. It's as bad as that. And when we go to senior positions where the remunerations are much higher, it is as bad as 77 pence to £1 paid to a man. It's like 77 paisa to 1 rupia paid to men, which is like 3 months women going without remuneration. So that's one of the challenges A lot is being done in the UK for improving the gender pay scenario. However, there is a long way to go, as we have seen, in terms of challenges. So what I have done is I have interviewed around 70 plus board members of a range of listed companies in the UK. Most of them are, global companies. And it's a elite interview methodology. Many of you may be familiar with it, and I have thematically analyzed the data and published extensively. And my Google Scholar page, link to my Google Scholar page is also given. What I've found, mainly two things related to gender, is that I have heard stories after stories after stories of women being discriminated for gender. They are given, even when they are in boardrooms, I was quite surprised about that. Even when they reach boardrooms, discrimination is not over. So discriminatory remuneration is pretty rampant. Work-related constraints, women are not allowed to make teams of their choice. Other colleagues, male colleagues, are actually controlling their choices. Sexist narratives, Dr. Shakila spoke about objectification of women when they go to leadership roles, very much prevalent over there, and so much so that women actually stop going to work-related settings, work-related socializing, because they are being objectified in those meetings. But over the period of time, I noticed in my research, I have found that over the period of time, when they are subjected to discriminatory behavior, they develop three types of resilience, three types of coping strategies. First is avoidant. When they are in their early period of, a leadership role, they avoid, as I said, they avoid situations where they can be objectified, etc., etc. But there comes a time when they become very active about supporting other women, encouraging organizations to change the norms, change the eligibility criteria, so that more and more women can come into leadership roles. My recent research, it's an ongoing research, British Academy is funding this research, actually indicates something else. It is about passive coping strategy. Psychologists amongst you would probably relate to it, where women have become absolutely nonchalant. Earlier, what would happen is that men would say that, oh, it's very easy for you to get a board position. After all, you're a woman. And earlier, women would feel quite uncomfortable about it. But nowadays, I'm noticing that since this voluntary targets have been for a long time, and narrative has been about gender diversity, women are quite nonchalant about it. Yeah, you had the privilege for so many years. Now I'm getting the privilege. So what? Learn to deal with it. So these are some of the findings. In terms of way forward, and these are some of the quotes that I have picked up from my research. Again, I'm not going to get into that. The slides would be with you all to see. In terms of moving forward, continuation of voluntary target, my research shows, I think, is the way forward. I think stopping the voluntary target would be actually abruptly stopping the progress. Oh, sorry about that. Have I exceeded the time? I think a few minutes. And then there is a strong support, although, UK is not a kind of a setting where quotas are very popular, but more and more women are recommending that probably a limited period quota or legislative intervention for women across hierarchies would be a good idea. Finally, the way forward is that we need to mentor each other. As Dr. Shakila was referring, we need to be inclusive, we need to be supportive of each other, we need to ally, train, skill build. These are some of the thoughts as to how organizations are moving forward and how they're going. I want to leave you with just one final thought, is that recently the Financial Reporting Council actually came up with the idea where they said that in all the listed companies, at least one of the 4 roles should be occupied by a woman. Either the chairperson should be a woman, or senior independent director should be a woman, or the CEO should be a woman, or the CFO should be a woman. I think it's an interesting observation, and the UK context seems to be moving from a very generic business case rationale to very gender focused rationale, where specific actions are being recommended. So that is all that I had to say. Thank you so much for this opportunity to present my research. I deliberately want to constrain myself, otherwise I'll lose track of time. And if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. If any collaborations are in the offing, I would appreciate that very much. Thank you so much, Professor Shukla. Thank you so much, Dr. Kamla Devi.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Hope you will stay with us till the end of the session, because we still have 7 minutes, but then we'll move on and we'll have the Q&A section at the last.
Okay.
So, ma'am, you started with the gender diversity on boards, the business rationally, and bridging the gender gap in UK, which has really led to the greater heights, and how the women directors have moved from 15% to 40% in over the period of years. Women directors in NED, like how they have moved. Then again, how the secondary position occupied by middle and working class women in 19th century is just symbolized. And you also spoke about how the laws has been catching up to bring in the gender equality in UK. And you also spoke about how the private sectors helped, more women to come into the leadership roles in the boardrooms. You spoke about gender pay gap, gender discrimination, discrimination in remuneration, work-related constraints, and how sexist narrative. And you specifically focused on your research with a lot of data and statistics, ma'am. It was really an excellent session, and thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.
So I think we'll move on to
the
next panelist. So next, I invite Farida Akhtar, President, Women Resource Center, Bangladesh. Ma'am, please welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you, and greetings from Bangladeshi women, on the International Women's Day. So that's, thank you for inviting me to this panel. And I'm really happy to hear Dr. Mariam Shakila and Dr. Rita Goel. It really sets the tone, and we have to also discuss in diverse ways, not only very typical ways of talking about gender equality. So this is very good in that sense. But I want to start with, saying our solidarity with the women in Palestine, women in Gaza who are being bombed every day. And, out of like till today, maybe there are over 30,000 killed, but among them 70% are women and children. And it's important to know why women are targeted. And these are target killing because women give birth to children, and according to the Israelis, they will become the next Hamas, or they will be fighting against them. And also the children, even the newborn child is not spared. So this is something, we talk about gender equality globally, but I think at present, at this moment, the issue of women, our solidarity to women in Palestine is very, very important. So I'm sure all of you are with me on this. And then actually I wanted to, I was looking at the theme of this year's International Women's Day, which UN sets every year. And then when I found the last progress report shows, in 2023, that there is an alarming 360 billion annual deficit in spending on gender equality measures, which Kamla mentioned in the beginning, that we still need that. But why this deficit? We have to ask that question first, instead of asking for the money. But why this deficit is still there, where we are spending so much money in wars, in, I was just looking at some figures on the military spending, like the value of military spending globally has grown steadily in the past years and reached $2.24 trillion US since the Russia-Ukraine war. So there is no shortage of money in funding those wars, which just kills, people. And also, like, it causes starvation, it causes hunger, it causes, malnutrition, violence against women, and the inequality, of course, at different levels. So I think that when I was looking at this $360 billion deficit, which will also cause a lot of poverty and also how the woman will be negatively impacted. But then when I look at these things, that how the war is going on, war and killings are going on, then it is not acceptable. So as women, we have to fight against that. So, but also we have to see that in 2030, SDG will be, completed, and SDG 5 is about gender equality. So if there is still so much shortage of money for gender equality measures, in 6 years, you cannot just expect that things will be better. So that is very, very, uh, but my also question is that, will just having $360 billion solve our problem? I don't think so, because we are not, questioning the development models that are pushed on us, the new liberal policies that are being, practiced and being imposed by the development agencies. And so it's just not having the money, it's also, you also need the structural system that will, we will have gender equality. That is not being built, so women are still seen as cheap labor for the in the export oriented industries and many other industries. And also, like when the climate change question comes, women are seen only as victims, and but not very much as change agents that they can play. So they have to take measures according to what these big industrial system that is imposed on us gives us. So, and also I'm really tired of looking at the UNFCCC meetings, the COPs on climate change, which definitely fails every year, in coming to just a consensus on reduction of carbon emissions. Because the rich countries do not want to change their lifestyle. So their fossil fuel based lifestyle has to go on. So there has to be oil companies who support them. And even now the COPs are happening in the oil countries, like in Dubai, and in, all these countries where they are controlling the decisions. So I think women of the rich industrial countries are also playing, not playing their role in changing their government's, pledges and commitments. So within the global women, I think we have to see that the class difference, the regional difference, in the end we become like Bangladesh, a poor country, whereas US is the richest country. So women in rich country can do anything, doesn't matter what happens to us in Bangladesh. So I think that those questions has to be raised. And also in the food production, now they are promoting only industrial food production, and forgetting about the small scale farmers who used to do the biodiversity based farming, who used to save seeds, particularly the women used to save seeds. But those things has to go on. Now big companies are coming in, Monsanto and DuPont and other companies are coming in, Syngenta coming in, taking our very common vegetables like brinjal, eggplant, to genetically modify and having patent on them. So our biodiversity is getting lost, So these are all issues that are women's issues. We cannot just say that women's issues are only about having some jobs or having some equality in some higher positions. Unfortunately, we have women in the highest position even. Our prime minister is woman. But as women, we cannot even vote. We have voting rights, as Kamala Vani was, when she was talking about the history, the suffrage movement, in Europe, they had to fight for it till the early part of this last century. But we got it, when our country was free in 1971, we had voting rights. Now, for last 15 years, we are having governments without us voting for it. The elections are happening and we cannot vote for it. So these are issues that democracy is an issue that that women's question are left totally out of it. So when I'm just trying to give you a different dimension of what gender equality and women's rights should mean. And I think it's very, very serious issue. And in Bangladesh, I just want to talk about a little bit more on agriculture, because we are a small country with 170 million people, but we have very good, diverse kinds of crops and food and everything. But now the only kind of agriculture that is promoted by the government is the industrial agriculture. And we cannot save seeds, we cannot, the few multinational corporations are coming in and taking over the business and also the food crops, so that cannot produce, farmers cannot produce the crops that they want to. And women constitute almost 50% of the farming communities who are part of the agriculture, but they are now taken out of agriculture, so that the companies can have their business. So and also the industries can have supply of cheap labor. So if women are made redundant in the agriculture sector, in the rural sector, that means that happened in US and also in UK, that they were released as labor for the industries. At the time of the Industrial Revolution, they got the peasant girls, like the girls of the farmers, to come to work as cheap labor. So this is the background that we have, and we are struggling with that. Another issue is that, globally, there are many, many feminist organizations, which is also mentioned in the UN Women document, that the feminist organizations, feminist change makers, receive merely like 0.13% of the official development support. This is very unfair, because they are the ones who are supporting the international groups, at the grassroots, and they are allowing the women to work in the way they want to, but they don't get the support. And so this is really a shame. I would say this is really a shame that these feminist change makers do not get enough support, whereas I want to warn you that now corporations are coming in big ways to support women, because they want to come. Like now in the World Economic Forum that happens in Davos, they talk about gender equality. So they talk about the companies, CEOs in many companies, Coca-Cola and other big companies, they have CEOs as women, and they show us as if this is a big success. But, Dr. Rita Goyal is showing in a very interesting way that how women are there in the, boards and other things. That is one thing. But they are now using the private sector and bringing women in there, but against the women, mass women globally, So they will really use the women around the world and to be in the corporate sector. So corporate sector is now in the health, corporate sector is now in agriculture, corporate sector in many service sectors. So you will see many women, but these women are actually only being used by the corporations, not the way we would like to see them. So I just want to say that when the corporations are taking over women's lives, Bill Gates and Melinda Gates, when they come up with big funds for health, this does not, we are not happy with that, because they are also creating a lot of conditions that is taking our rights away. So we would not accept that. And I just want to ask a question, that whether we now have a shortage of $360 billion just for gender equality measures, but will the global forces who are funding the wars, who are funding the bombing in Gaza, will they stop and save the money so that we can have the money for women's rights and they can work on it? I just think that even the theme of this year, Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress, was a bit too simplistic and not enough critical for us to move ahead with it. So I think we have to join hands and, to work together with our own capacities. And we have to really demand strongly that our money is ours and it cannot go for wars. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. It is an excellent presentation. You actually started with solidarity for women in Palestine, wherein 30,000 people are killed, out of which 70% of it were women. And you also spoke about how this movement is very important to remember about the solidarity and about how alarming deficit exists, about the amount of investment that we have to make on women. But the question is why that deficit exists, and how the money are spent on wars, and how we have to focus on the SDG Goal 5, which is about gender equality, and but still we are lagging behind, and how the implementation part is weaker, and especially when we talk about the climate changes, how the developed countries actually don't want to be part of it, and which becomes is an not productive thing, and how they concentrate on oil countries, and how really the rich countries just avoid that. And you also spoke about women issues in the broader perspective, and how women need to be participative. I mean, women's participation in agriculture needs to be recognized, but how it is narrowed down, and how the diversified country like India has been less concentrated, and women's focus is reduced. So how the feminist organizations have been receiving very less amount, and which is very, very important. So it was an interesting session, ma'am. Thank you so much for being part of this discussion. And probably we'll have a discussion at the later part of our presentation, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Next, I would like to invite Professor Sabia Hussain, former director of Sarojini Naidu Center for Women Studies. Welcome you, ma'am. Sabia, ma'am.
Yes, I'm very much here.
Yes, thank you.
So good evening, everyone. I was just listening to all the panelists, and they were excellent presentation, and it touched my heart also, especially when Farida spoke about the situation of women and how this war affects women more than anything. So I'm grateful to Asha Paras Peace and Harmony Foundation for giving me this opportunity, and once again a very happy International Women's Day to all empowered women as we have the courage to speak out. So I am going to address the issue of one of the category of women which have not appeared in many of the discourses, whether it is policy discourse or gender discourse or women's studies discourse. and that is middle-aged women and their psychosocial well-being. So, and this I have seen during my research, but I'm not going to share my research. I'm just going to focus on the uh, uh, movements, whether it is global health movement or women's movement in India, or the policy programs and things like that, which have been formulated by Government of India to address the health issue. And so with this, as we know that middle age is a cusp of diminishing youth and approaching to old age. And it is a period of human adulthood that immediately precedes to onset of old age. So this age group is very often are neglected both in the public domain as well as in the private domain. Even family members, they do not pay much attention to the changes that a woman goes through in this age. So they basically they cry in silent, you know. So a period of or anticipation of future do not matter when look at the middle age, you know. And they are unheard, their silence does not reflect their expression. It's lack, you know. We don't have much platform to talk about these problems, and they face in silently they face, but they do not find any expression of that pain. The reality is that in India, middle-aged women between that is the age between 40 to 60 years of age do not find a spot in gender studies. In almost all the there are 39 centers, women studies centers in India. We have master's program also, and but this category of women, they do not reflect in studies discourse. And at policy level, this age group has got negligible attention, as I said earlier also. For instance, health, population and nutritional policy, and policy on senior citizens. The major focus of women are in the reproductive age group. Government of India, it strongly committed to 2030 SDG, Sustainable Development Goal, and Sabka Saath Sabka Vikas, or development with all and for all policy initiatives for inclusive development, converged well with the SDG. However, having said all these policies, however, the question that needs to be addressed by all concerned, by all stakeholders, as to how far do middle-aged women find their face in this Sabka Saath Sabka Vikas. Not only at the national level, this age group is less considered. At the international level also, various covenant and conferences have paid very little attention on the health and well-being of middle-aged women, especially the psychological stress which they go through at this age. And that's the question we need to ask: why are women of this age group not included in feminist and policy discourse? Why are these women received inadequate attention in the policies and programs on health in general and women's health in particular? What needs to be done to make the policies more inclusive, and how we can include the issue health, and especially health, psychosocial well-being, health and well-being of these middle-aged women. So when we talk about women's health movement, global women's health movement, you know, began the women's global health movement that began in 1960s. The major focus was on abortion and reproductive rights. Those were the primary concern of global women's health movement. And during 1960s and 70s was they were the activists, they were fighting to gain control over their own reproductive rights. And though individuals within the women's global women's health movement had widely divergent goals, but one common goal united them all was demand for improved health care for all women and end to sexism in the health system. But then again, childbirth practices was discussed in that health movement. By 1980s, became the powerful political force, and from reproductive right to prenatal care. So these were the. I'm just putting some major points to see that how far these movements at the global level have addressed the issue of psychosocial well-being and health of middle-aged women. So it when I read all these things, I found that this age group was missing from their discourse. So we need to think about it when we talk about gender equity and equality. This is the biggest challenge I have read, that there is a gap. So we need to look into this gap, how to bridge this gap, and how to bring in the arena of this discourse, global health movement discourse, the issue of middle-aged women. The Beijing Platform of Action, the ICPD, and CEDAW, they talk little bit. From here the discourse started, especially when we talk about CEDAW Article 22. State parties are encouraged to address the issue of women's health throughout the women's lifespan. So from here we get some of the pinch of salt jisko kehte hain. We started having this, and when we look at the women's movement in India, the much talked the which we call the like holy book is the commission report towards equality, the status of women. uh, uh, it talks about declining child sex ratio, the economy, the discriminatory personal law, female mortality and morbidity, marginalization of women in economy, and I think all those things. But somehow it did not capture again the issue of health issue, is particularly health issue of middle-aged women. All these health issues were related to the women of reproductive age. Then when it comes to reproductive rights of women, most of the efforts of women's groups in India have been directed against excess committed to the in the name of family planning programs. Women's general health and reproductive health rights were brought to the forefront through several campaigns against the introduction of hazardous contraceptive. Again, we have to see that women's health movement, which has started in India with the commencement of Trans Equality Report, it again focused on the issue of contraceptives. And the whole debate, whole movement was on progesterone, HDEPV, say. And by 1970, the use of drug became popular not only in a variety of gynecological problems, such as menstrual irregularities and for pregnancy testing. It's a long list, group, human rights group throughout the country have initiated consistent campaign to oppose the introduction of injectables. So all these, in Bangladesh also, there was a campaign. What I want to say through this thing, that it's the biggest challenge, we hardly address, and every woman has to face has to face this phase of life. But where do we stand? So, and anti-fertility vaccine, things like that, assisted reproductive technologies, again it is more tilted towards the women of reproductive age. So uh, 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 this is the position of women's movement in India, especially when they talk about health of a woman. So all the focus of women's movement, most majority talked about contraceptive, reproduction, and things like that. But hardly any attention was paid to to the health and well-being of middle-aged women. And when we come to policies and programs, the last few decades have witnessed policymakers' preoccupation with pregnancy and contraception related services than overall health of women from life cycle approach. We have to see women's health from life cycle. Every age has a specific requirement, and if we ignore the later age of a woman's life, which is so-called not reproductive age, but I believe that in terms of human reproduction, we can say no, but she contributes a lot. But their health and well-being is hardly addressed. For instance, national population policy, there are immediate objective, midterm objective, and a long-term objective. They all focusing on demographic goals, such as reducing IMR, MMR, achieving universal immunization, access to information, registration of birth and death, marriages and pregnancy. But here also we find a gap. Talking about national health policy also, reduction of MMR, IMR mortality, and communicable diseases. It focuses on those things. Nutrition policy also, screening of all pregnant women and lactating mothers for chronic energy deficiency, identifying women with weight below 40 kg and providing adequate antenatal, intrapartum and neonatal care under the RCH program. Again, we can find that the focus is on the women of reproductive age. It's fine. I don't have any objection to this. They need during pregnancy, they need a special care. But what about middle-aged women? Do they not need any medical intervention? So senior citizen also, there are 43 provisions. Senior Citizen Policy 2011, there is a national policy. There are 43 provisions under 9 broader headings of this policy, and only 2 provisions are for women. So look at the policy, the previous panels, they talk about policies. Policies, unless it is gender sensitive, it hardly is going to make any difference. So, and coming back to the women's health programs in India, all the reproductive, all the health programs in India, almost I have not taken all the programs, but few important programs that again focuses on the women of reproductive age group under National Iron Plus initiatives, Surakshit Matritva Ashwasan, then Janni Suraksha Yojana, very popular scheme, Janni Suraksha Yojana, then Janni Shishu Suraksha Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Surakshit Matritva Abhiyan, Lakshya. All and functionalization of first referral unit, outreach camps, IEC, BCC, all these are, when we go detail into the component of these policies and programs, we find there is a gap. All these policies are on the women of reproductive age. So why I have this is very close to my heart. I used to see my mother when she was going into menopause. She used to get very irritated, but we never thought about this. What is the reason why she's so irritated? Because we never we never talk about this. There is a taboo, because the social perception, because of the social perception, we see that okay, now she is useless, she is not going to contribute. But look at the contribution, one contribution she that is biological, but she can contribute in immense way. So one program has recently, I'll just take 5 more minutes, Asha ji, then I'll finish. Under the wellness clinics, out of 10, this is a new program launched by Government of India. under health and wellness clinic, there are 10 programs, and 2 are for elderly, and 1 program slightly covers women. So what do we do now? You know, this is such an important age group. You are going away from your youth, you are entering into in the category of elderly population, but there is no program, no attention. Even the social perception is very different. Policy is not doesn't include the programs on health of women. It doesn't talk even a single program about middle-aged women. So I just want to conclude that unfortunately the focus of women's health in various policies and programs is largely confined to sexual and reproductive health, which with almost no importance garnered to post-menopausal or health at middle life. Reproductive, this is the new baja of government. RMNCH plus A, adolescent, National Health Mission, all these programs, they don't talk about women beyond their reproductive age. Women's global health movement was silent about this age group. Women's movement in India also largely fell in the same trap. So we need to talk about, we need to discuss the issue of middle-aged women, because the psychological stress, the other kind of the problems, isolation, sleeplessness, they some of the women, they feel ashamed of being sweated in public, because we are not ready to accept women in this age group. So acceptance and inclusion is very, very important for an inclusive growth of health and well-being of middle-aged women. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. It was really close to heart because, you have touched upon, you started with the middle-age problem of, psychosocial well-being. But then you started with the global to Indian perspective, and you just, wonderfully narrated how these health movements and health movement discourses have missed out this, middle-aged women's problem, and they really, do not find space. And how the negligible evidences has been evident just to make sure that middle-aged women are missed. So global health movement, abortion and reproductive health rights reflected, but then somehow it has missed all the middle-aged women's problem. And you also spoke about how there is a demand for improvement and inclusion of this middle-aged women's problem. And it was really a good narration that you took from global to Indian perspective, ma'am. So appreciate your presentation, and it was really wonderful. I think it was a good insight to everybody, to a new research perspective one can take up. I mean, I had this always in my mind, ma'am, like how middle-aged women has been missed, but then today you have brought it out so beautifully. Thank you so much, ma'am. So now I invite Professor Asha Shukla, ma'am.
Before you invite Professor Asha Shukla, I just want to give one information that myself, Farida, and Mariam, we are member of South Asian Women Network, and we give our inputs from time to time to this network. This is South Asian Women Network, and me and Farida has contributed an article. We worked in a project with one of our friend in University of British Columbia. The book has come out. We'll share the title of the book. That is COVID-19. She contributed the scene from Bangladesh, and I contributed the scene from India at the during COVID-19. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So congratulations for that, ma'am. Definitely we'll look into it. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I invite Professor Asha Shukla, ma'am, former Vice Chancellor, Dr. Ambedkar University of Social Science, Madhya Pradesh, Mahu. Welcome you, ma'am.
Good evening. On the occasion of International Women's Day, today online international panel discussion on gender equity and contemporary challenges. My dear friends, Madam Farida Akhtar, Dr. Mariam Shakila, Dr. Rita Goyal, Professor Sabiha Hussain, and Dr. Kamla Menon. Also, on this dais, Professor Kusum Kumari, Professor Ravindra Shukla, Dr. Sushila Goyal, Madam Shiv Pyari, Dr. Anjali Chauhan, Dr. Jaya Fukan, and Sonu Kumar. On behalf of Asha Paras Foundation for Peace and Harmony, and also on Asha Paras International Research Journal of Gender Studies, really I want to welcome you and want to express my heartfelt gratitude to accept our invitation for this panel discussion. One thing I want to share, Asha Paras Foundation for Peace and Harmony is publishing 2 research journals and 1 Hindi magazine. All are on gender based. So if you or participants want to send their research papers for upcoming issue of the International Research Journal of Gender Studies, you are most welcome. And for more the details, definitely, yes, I will share with all the things with you. Nobody introduced Dr. Kamla Meni. I want to introduce. She is Associate Professor in the Department of Women's Studies of Pondicherry University. It is in South India. She is a very good researcher, academician, and I am proud to say she is my DLET student also. That's why sometimes I say, Dr. Kamla, you have to do this, you have to do that. Dr. Jaya, she is here, but she is not participating by words in this panel discussion, but every time she is with us. Today, Dr. Kamla Meni express in detail about the International Women's Day. So, dear friends, I want to congratulate all of you and want to give my heartfelt wishes to all of you for the eve of International Women's Day. It is today, tomorrow, yesterday, whole day, whole year, everywhere. It is International Women's Day. Because as a mother, if we are here, then it will be International Women's Day in each country, either that is developed or underdeveloped. So Dr. Kamla also said about the global policy for women, challenges of gender. Dr. Mariam, her ideas were based on challenges of gender equality and equity, and also she suggested some solutions also. Inclusivity, unconscious biases and stereotypes, unequal opportunities, assertiveness, stand with courage. Dear friends, we have to introduce globally gender sensitization training program for family, for society, for colleges, for university to be strengthen gender sensitive behavior. Dr. Rita Goyal, it's a very personal relationship I have with Dr. Rita Goyal. I want to say she is daughter of my dear friend, Dr. Sushila Goyal. And you may see the smiling face of Sushila Goyal with the proud, with the full of proud and full of inner happiness to see Rita Goyal here addressing this panel discussion. I was so long discussing with Dr. Rita Goyal about the boardroom situations in UK. And I wish, because she is from India also, she study here, so it will be very good if we may do any comparative studies in between UK and India. And when the Farida is here, when the Mariam is here, we may see the global scenario of boardroom situations, gender biases and gender gaps also. I think I will discuss in detail with Dr. Rita Goyal because my demands already increased, never stops. Madam Farida, what to say? Really, I am touched because we are also facing so many things in India, in nearby South Asian countries also. The situation of US women, European women, African women, and South Asian women are totally different. Issues are totally different. But one thing is common, we all are women. That is very strong point. That's why we should be address the issues on common platform. That may be some Bangladeshi type issue, some Indian type issue, some Maldives issue, or some UK issue. But the issues are common with gender perspective. You spoke about poverty, hunger, violence, killing of women, cheap labor, voting rights. Although voting rights in India, we are enjoying that right, but in so many countries, when I was writing my book on Stri Sangharsh ke mudde, the issues of women struggle, then we found out so many issues are there. Very different issues, very particular issues. But we have to address it on common platform, and we will. Definitely we will. Professor Sabia, she's behind this organizational part of panel discussion. 2 days before we met in a national conference organized in Central India, Jabalpur, in a national seminar, we discussed what we have done, that is okay. But we have discussed that we will do very good national program with paper and poster presentation on women in power. What is power? We have to understand this. I have did my one project on women in power. When I started this project, the big question among me and my research team was exactly what is power? Power in position or in chair or within the person? What is the power? In social structure, power is different, but in economic structure, power is totally different. On when you are in politics, power is 100% different. So what is power? We are going to organize very soon a national seminar with our participants, with our researchers, with our professors on women in power, so that we can understand the reason behind it, how the economics persons thinks about power, what is the scenario about political science, what is the scenario of gender perspective, and what is the scenario of other subjects, other disciplines. So very soon, and you will be, obviously, when I am sharing this here, so you will be invited to address these issues. If I am saying for the economic empowerment of women, what is it? If I am in service class or doing some work, then I may empowered, economically empowered? I think no. If we are not decision maker, we are not equally respectable by body, by mind, by ideas, then we are not empowered. So all these issues we are going to discuss in near future, but today we were discussing with Professor Sebiha. So I want to share few things. For any development programs, taking gender concern into account is important for two reasons. First, there are differences between the roles of men and women, differences that demand different approaches and strategies. Second, there is systematic inequality between men and women. Universally, there are clear patterns of women's inferior access to resources and opportunities. Moreover, women are systematically underrepresented in decision-making processes that shape their societies and their own lives. This pattern of inequality is a constraint to the progress of any society because it limits the opportunities of one half of its population. When women are constrained from reaching their full potential, that potential is lost to society as a whole. Program design and implementation should endeavor to address either or both of these factors. We addressed today's these issues in future. We will on common platform beyond the boundaries of the nation on only on gender perspective. We will address all these things, and definitely we will make it to change some policy decisions. At last, we can do our level best for the cause of gender sensitization, gender equality, and lastly, for women empowerment. Dear participants, two informations are for you. Your certificates will be with you within 10 days. Who are the registered participants? Your certificates will be reached within 10 days. And second, there are some queries which I was reading in chat box. Some query is specifically related with Indian perspective with Women's Studies Center. Vivek, please note down my mobile number and directly we will discuss on the issue. One query was addressed by Naveen and the Rita Goel very well, defined and discussed and answered that query. If any more query is there, now the Kamla Beni, you may discuss with other. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for touching upon everybody and introducing us and, narrating the whole thing. I think Sabya ma'am wants to talk for 2 minutes, ma'am. Sabya ma'am, please.
Yeah. I just wanted to share and give a big loud of applause for Dr. Mariam for her courage. She is very courageously, she has fought with the disease of cancer, and she is a cancer survivor. I salute her courage, And I really, all of you, please salute or clap for her encouraged journey, which she has traveled all the way. And she's still so lively. And she always invites us to Maldives, to her island. So hats off to you, Dr. Shakila. Thank you. I just wanted to share this.
It
Dr.
is
Mariam,
really, yes.
Dr. Mariam, now India is your second home. I invited you and Dr. Farida. Please come, stay with me, and we will organize all the programs. Also, we will roam here and there and cancer with you. No issue. Never it may be happen. Our
Thank
best
you so
wishes
much.
all are with you. Please come to India, stay with me. Thank you.
As we say, inshallah.
Appreciate,
you.
ma'am.
You
Appreciate that.
you have to come to Bangladesh, and I'm inviting all of you to come to Bangladesh. Mariam and Sabiha ji, Dr. Professor Asha Shukla ji, Kamla Beni, Dr. Rita Goel, everybody, please come.
And I'm
Definitely.
inviting everyone to the Maldives for a global conference.
Thank you, Mariam. Definitely, I will come. I will asking to Dr. Sabiha, please say to Farida madam and Mariam to invite us so that we may go. Both we may go. Thank you.
We are
Sabiha has not
inviting you already.
come. I've been asking her how many years. I don't know, 10 years, 12 years. Let's see. I think Professor Asha, you have to try and get everybody together and bring.
Yeah, sure. Definitely, yes, sure.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much,
much. It
ma'am.
was really a pleasure to be here and to discuss. If we had more time, we can go on and on and on. But I think my takeaway from this whole session is that the solution to inclusivity or to inspire inclusivity, part of the solution, a huge part of the solution is within us women. So also to bring that mind shift is also within us, because as someone here said, we are over 50% of the population, and we are the ones who nurture and bring up and educate the other 50%. And then so if the issue is to do with males, which I don't believe completely, because it is very fashionable for us to say it's the issue is with males. But what happens is the kind of attitude that males bring forward is also because they are also victims of a system that is not right. The system needs to be changed. The system needs to be changed from infancy, through education, through the way we bring the kids. And then I don't know, a lot of universities or a lot of schools, they don't have even gender study. Very few places have gender study. Like, for example, looking at the Maldives, none of the universities have gender studies. Um, and so this is a huge problem in many areas. And some places they have gender study, but the thing is it's not taken very seriously. And then so they just come out to tick off a box to say that, okay, we do gender study. But sadly, the practical aspect of gender studies and gender sensitization among among all of us, among our children, needs to be strengthened further for us to actually achieve our target.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. It was a well said statement, ma'am. I think all of us need to be gender sensitive, and it, as you said, it has to come out with women also. A well said thing, ma'am. So we are running out of time. I think we have, crossed 5 minutes. So I think one Pallavi, I think, and Mamta Das has raised their questions. We'll take up this one question and we'll come to the end of the session. Yes, Pallavi. Pallavi, are you there? or Dr. Mamta Das? Okay, so I think there are no questions. Like they put it in the chat box, and already Asha ji ma'am has addressed that question. Okay, I totally agree with Mariam ma'am. Patriarchy defines gender roles for both gender. Both male and female have to behave accordingly. No scope for both. Yeah, it's right. Okay, there's a small appreciation for you in the chat box, Mariam ma'am. So I mean, we appreciate you for that. And on the whole, we have come to the end of the session. Any question? I mean, the participant friends can write to our email ID and get the questions clarified. So I express my sincere, heartfelt thanks to all the panelists and experts who have been sharing their knowledge throughout in a wonderful way. And you have really enlightened us. And thank you for such a enlightening session shared with us. Our participant friends has really, enjoyed thoroughly your sessions. Thank you so much, ma'am. And I also thank Professor Asha Shukla, ma'am, for organizing such a wonderful session and bringing out in a successful manner. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.